Okay, so for my message, I want you to imagine your favorite movie or your your hero when you were growing up, or even if you have a hero still. It could be a sports star. It could be, for instance, it could be Usain Bolt, or it could be Victor Matfield if you're a Blue Bull supporter. It could be anyone. It could be like, for instance, Braveheart is a very popular movie. Very, very popular movie because it has to do with the history of the Scottish. Now I want you to imagine all the sacrifice, and to think about all the sacrifice and all the hard work that they had to put in to get where they are and were, and what they achieved in their careers. For instance, let's take, who of you knows about Michael Jordan? He's probably the greatest, they say one of the greatest ever basketball stars in the history of basketball. Now he had to sacrifice a lot. When he was young, he was a very small guy, and everybody said he's not going to make it because he's not long enough. And in basketball, obviously, you need to be tall. And he put in a lot of hard work, and he grafted and grafted and grafted, and he worked himself tirelessly to achieve what he wanted to achieve. Okay, now I wanna ask this: what if he sold himself short? What would we know Michael Jackson? Oh, Michael Jordan, sorry, not Michael Jackson. All right. What would happen if he would have quit? If somebody said to him, "No, you're not long enough. You're not strong enough. You're not fast enough." Would we have known him today? No. What if he surrendered? He just gave up, just grew tired. Okay? You wouldn't have seen Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck jumping around with Michael Jordan in a movie. Okay? Because you see, if he would have done that, if Usain Bolt would have done that, and if the character that Mel Gibson played in Braveheart would have done that, they would have been slaves to their failure for the rest of their life. And that failure, that it would have kept them, it would have made them slaves. They would have been deflated. They would have felt not good enough, and they would continuously think to this one point in their life where they gave up, and it would be like shackles. And this is basically what my message is tonight. My title for my message is Unshackled. Okay. Okay, so you can put the scripture up for us. I'm going to read it. Okay, now, who of you believes in some of the, or who of you, let me ask it like this, who of you found some of the stories in the Bible, you think about them and say, I don't know if I can believe that, eh? If you think about it, all right? If you think about it, if somebody comes up a week from now and say to you, my cousin, he was for 3 days, he was in the belly of a whale, and he got spit out. You should go to the Luna house, huh? Think about it. The scripture about Jonah, he was in a fish's belly for 3 days. It was pitch black. He couldn't see. He was not like, let me light a match. Or, he couldn't see anything. It's literally darkness. Couldn't see anything. Probably just heard the stomach of this whale just processing the food, and he's just thinking, okay, when is it my turn? And the whole time he's just smelling this rotten fish smell. It's not pleasant. For 3 days. Okay, so I just want to read to you from Jonah 2 verse 1. Then Jonah prayed to the Lord, his God, from the belly of the fish, saying, I called out to the Lord out of my distress, and he answered me. Out of the belly of Sheol I cried, and you heard my voice. For you cast me into the deep, into the heart of the seas, and the flood surrounded me. All your waves and all your billows passed over me. Then I said, I am driven away from your sight, yet I shall again look upon your holy temple. He was in darkness. He was in a place where he was physically in darkness, and in his heart and in his soul he was also in a place of darkness. Okay? Out of distress, Jonah called to God and he said, I've been driven away from your sight, but still I will call to you, I will look to you, I will gaze upon the holy temple of the Lord. Out of the stress, he came to a place where he had no hope. There was no light at the end of the tunnel, no chance. There was nothing he could do by himself. And sometimes we come to a place where we must call to the Lord, where there's nothing we can do. But think about this. There's nothing you can do in this situation, or in any situation. There's nothing you can do. Alright? But we are in a context of post Jesus dying on the cross, in a tomb for 3 days, and rising and giving us this message. And Jonah was not under those circumstances. Jonah didn't have the promise of eternal life. Jonah didn't have the promise and the love of Jesus Christ. But still, he was in a place where he said, where he has hope in God, where he has hope that God can forgive him. Even though Jonah knew he was driven away from God by his own decisions, he finds hope in the fact that he can call to the Lord. How often we come to a place whereby we can do nothing, there's no place for us to go, and there's no light. We find hope in darkness. We find hope in God, where there's literally, you're pushed to the wall, you're out of your comfort zone, there's nothing you can do. You cannot go to there, you cannot phone this guy, you cannot talk to this guy, you cannot go to the bank to solve this. Nothing. Credit cards maxed out, no money in the bank, nothing. It's only God. And you say, okay, God, if you don't, then I'm done. You know, and God comes through. In darkness, when we can see nothing, it's a dead end. We find hope in that place. And I want to go further into verse 5. The waters closed in over me to take my life. The deep surrounded me. Weeds were wrapped about my head. At the roots of the mountain I went down to the land whose bars closed upon me forever. Yet you brought up my life from the pit, O Lord my God. When my life was fainting away, I remembered the Lord, and prayer came to you. And my prayer came to you into your holy temple. Those who pay regard to vain idols forsake their hope of steadfast love. Now this verse 8 is so powerful. I don't know if you get it, but it says there in verse 8 that those who pay regard to vain idols forsake their hope of steadfast love. In other words, those who cast their nets at idols, not pop idols, but idol worship. Those who are concerned with that, surrenders God's love for them. If you worship money, you surrender God's love for you. And I always, you can ask if you know me. Dwayne knows me, Monique knows me, my wife knows me. There's one thing that I've read about a couple of years ago, and I say it always. I say it, who's on the throne of your heart? Because if God's not on the throne of your heart, how can you expect God's love for you? God will love you, but fully. I mean fully. You cannot, if you are busy with idol worship, if you worship your job, or if you worship money or anything else, you surrender God's total, full, out of control love for you. You see, God puts hope in us in the midst of circumstances and trials where there is no hope. It's how God made us. We just have this hope that somehow God can come through. All right? We just have this faith and this, there's still a chance that God can do something. But just think about it, if God wasn't there, we really wouldn't have had that hope. But you see, the problem is that most of the people, or most of us, that we get into that place and we have that hope in God, and hope is something important for a lot of people. Because if you don't have hope, then what is there to live for? Because I have hope that one day I'll see my baby girl, my daughter that's there. I'll see her, excelling in school. She'll go and choose a career, and I hope that someday she'll find something that she'll love, and she can provide for her own family. She'll have children of their own. It's the hope that I have for her. It's the same hope that we have in God, because God also has hope for us. Hope is a very important thing. But you see, most of us only have hope in God when it's going bad. When it's going good, it's like we sang, like I said, it's about me. It's about I. And in a couple of chapters after this, Jonah, everybody knows the story. Jonah gets spat out by the whale, by the fish, and eventually reluctantly goes to Nineveh. He doesn't want to, all right, because he feels this city doesn't deserve God. This city is beyond redemption. This city can't be saved. This is how he feels, and he's angry. And he's a Jewish boy away from his home, away from his country, in the middle of Nineveh. And I don't know if you know where that is, but it's a very hot place, very dry place. And God says to Jonah, why are you mad? And he says nothing, and he just goes, sits upon a mountaintop. And he's just mad, and he's just not going to say, okay, God, if you're going to do something, I'm just going to sit and watch how you do it. And eventually, overnight, a plant springs up just like that. It springs up. And he takes so much comfort, and he has so much affection for this plant, because first of all, it's hot. It's dry, it's probably thirsty. So this plant gives him shade, all right? Because first God sent a storm, all right? And then he gets thrown out of the boat. Then God sends a whale, and he gets swallowed up by the whale. Then he goes to Nineveh. Then he gets a desert, and now God sent a plant. And he takes comfort and he takes affection in this plant. And as the plant overnight sprang up, overnight he died because God sends a worm to eat the plant up. And again, Jonah is mad. First of all, because he doesn't want to be there. He feels that this city doesn't deserve God's love and God's forgiveness. And now this thing which he has taken affection to has died. Now he's thirsty and warm and hot again. And Jonah is just straight up mad. He's irritated. And God asks Jonah, why are you mad that I've taken away this gourd? And Jonah said, he says, are you mad? And Jonah says, yes, I am. I would rather die. He's so focused on this plant giving him shade where he is sitting because he is thirsty and hot and irritated. He would rather die. And God says to Jonah, Jonah, is it not within my right to care for the people of this city and the animals that live in it? Boom, the book of Noah. Oh, Jonah it's the end. If you were to write the story, a book, or if you would script and film a movie of this book of Jonah, they would probably label it as trash because the ending is the ending. But God, but what it says in this book at the end, it says that Jonah is concerned with himself. He's concerned with his plant that died. And God is concerned about the people, but Jonah is concerned about himself. But you see, true obedience is the refusal to compromise in any regard with our relationship with God, regardless of the consequences. A.W. Tozer. Because you see, the reason like Jonah, and the reason we are like Jonah, the reason why we falter and we fail, is the very fact that we compromise in our relationship with God. If you feel spiritually, if you feel like you're in a desert, or if you hit a plateau, or if there's a barrier or something keeping you from God, it's because you've compromised something in your life. I'm telling you this. There's something that you've compromised in your relationship with God. Now, I have a lot of respect and I have a lot of admiration for Henny and Theann, because they have this thing in their life where they say if they watch a movie and there's any form of using the Lord's name in vain, they put the TV off, or they walk out of the cinema. It's something they said, we're not going to compromise on this. How many of us compromise on that? Now, I'm not saying that's what you should do, but that's what they do. How many times we start out with God and we're so excited and on fire, and slowly we just lower our standards in our relationship, and we lower it and lower it. No, we should raise our standards. No compromise. Because if we compromise, the more compromise comes in, the more God goes out. Let me ask you this. What if Jesus compromised? Would he have hung on the cross? What if Moses had compromised? Would the Israelites even have left Egypt? What if Abraham had compromised? Would Joseph even have been born? Think about this. What if Paul had compromised? How would we look at churches today if Paul had compromised something? If the first church in Acts, if those disciples, if those men of God, if they had compromised, how would this have impacted us? So how dare we compromise in our relationship with God? God's standards for us is plain and simple. But when we compromise it, then God, there's nothing God can. If you compromise it and you sell yourself short, and if you lower the bar, there's only so much God can do. God is a jealous God. He wants everything of you. He wants your whole heart. God doesn't want, like Dwayne said, He doesn't want pieces of you. He doesn't want certain boxes of your life. God doesn't want to be compartmentalized in your life. This is plain and simple. Compromise has no place in a relationship with God. And you see, if it's me and my and I and we and ours, I don't hear the word God. You see what I'm getting at? There can be no totality of God in our life if it's me and I and ours. Compromise kills so much off in our relationship with God. You see, the thing is, God destined us for greatness. For a unique, beautiful, simplistic, majestic, loving relationship with Him. And God's, I believe that God's intended will and vision for us is to be brave children of God. And we are busy with this theme, which I'm closing off tonight, which is Jesus did this. And Jesus died on the cross so that we can be brave. Jesus was brave so we can be brave. His braveness amplifies our braveness. He gave us reason to be brave. But you can't be brave when you compromise. This is plain and simple. And I want to ask Umian if you can play that song for us. And I just want you to close your eyes. And I just want you to take in the words.